If you'd ever seen Clyde and Jessica out on the street, you wouldn't have spared them a second glance. That's how utterly normal they were. That's how seamlessly they blended into the fabric of Milbank, South Dakota, a small town that they'd called home for many years. They had an infant son named Ty, and another baby on the way that they'd named Anika. But as it turns out, there was a wolf in their midst as well. 10 days before Christmas, 2021, Clyde's brother Brent was called over to the station by Police Chief Boyd Van Voren for two reasons. Firstly, he wanted to exchange Christmas cards with Hanson, and secondly, he wanted to ask about how things were at home. There'd been reports of disturbance at the Hanson residence, especially regarding tension between Hanson and his sister-in-law. When the police chief asked Hanson if there were any updates on the situation, all Hanson had to say was, they no longer live there. Live is the operative word here. Jessica and her husband Clyde were no longer alive. How did this happen? What factors were involved? What did the rather tense history between Brett and Jessica have to do with the incident? And why was he living with his brother and sister-in-law anyway? These are just some of the questions we'll attempt to answer today. So stay tuned while we unpack this horrific case. Brett Hanson was not the sort of person that mixed well with others. Indeed, even members of his own community have spoken out against him, with allegations of harmful conduct stretching all the way back to the 80s. During his youth, Hanson was heavily involved in religious activities. As a Jehovah's Witness, he frequently worked at administrative centers called Bethels, where the volunteers are called Bethelites. This suggests that Hanson was not only devout, but committed to supporting his religion practically at the organizational level as well. However, there have been unconfirmed allegations against him of gross misconduct. Bethel leaders received reports that he'd acted inappropriately with women of the community, and as a result, Hanson was sent home early. He was allegedly accused of sexual deviancy, a term that could mean anything from harassment or assault. These allegations may not be true, but they come from one of Brent's nieces, who herself claims to have been abused by him. And throughout the years, my uncle abused me severely, and Watchtower and Bethel and all the elders didn't listen. It's clear that while the Bethel leaders didn't want Hanson around their offices, they didn't think his actions were bad enough to report to the police. This led to him continuing the chain of abuse, and even his family members weren't safe from his perverse inclinations. What's even more tragic is that the victims' families gave him much support. According to the aforementioned victims, whose name has been redacted to maintain their privacy, even her father didn't want to lend his support in any way. The survivor of his abuse moved away when she grew up, hoping to try and start fresh. But a sudden incident occurred that brought her and the eventual victims of his homicidal rage, Clyde and Jessica, back to being within his reach. On December 7th, 2020, Margaret Iona Hanson passed away at the age of 94. She had 7 sons, namely Gary, Arden, Morris, Laverne, Clyde, and the youngest son, Brent. She also had a daughter named Wendy Basudel. Out of her children, only 3 were married at the time of her death: Gary, Rick, and Clyde. In a stomach-churning twist, Morris had done time in prison for the sexual assault of a minor. Her children came from Minnesota all the way to Arizona, although Rick, Laverne, Clyde, Brent, and Wendy still lived in Milbank. It was a family reunion of sorts, though not for the unnamed survivor that bravely told her story in a now-deleted YouTube video. I hadn't seen anybody in a really long time, and it was really hard being shunned because I was the only one being shunned. My father didn't even say anything to me, but instead, he sat behind me during the funeral with my murdering uncle, and he talked to him the whole time. The innocent woman, whose only crime was being related to a predator that set his sights on her, was shunned by her own family. It's a sign of the deep lack of regard that so many communities give to survivors of abuse. Oftentimes, the victims are the ones that have to swallow their rage and sorrow and find peace elsewhere, because neither the family nor the community cares. It might not happen all the time, but it happens often enough that this woman had to watch as Brent Hanson only escalated his desire to cause pain to others. One member of the Hanson family that his unnamed survivor talked to was Jessica. Brent was about to move in with her and Clyde, and she had no idea what kind of person he was. The survivor tried to tell Jessica that she was putting herself at risk by allowing Brent to stay with her, but it was no use. The Hanson family wanted to discredit the survivor for accusing Brent of abusing her when she was a child, and when so many people in the room were implying that she couldn't be trusted, Jessica was inclined to agree with them. The following year would prove to be one of the most stressful of Jessica's life. Jessica Hernandez was about 30 years younger than the man she eventually married. However, by all accounts, Clyde was a gentle and caring husband, and the couple were known for being devout and generous. Even so, Jessica, a native of New York, must have found the relatively quaint environment of South Dakota to be a bit of a culture shock. And then there was the fact that her brother-in-law was living with her. Brent occupied the basement portion of the home, while Clyde and Jessica lived on the upstairs floor. Clyde had a decent job in merchandise marketing at a local retail outlet, and he was able to afford a good life for his wife and son. With another baby on the way, Clyde and Jessica were clearly looking to the future, hoping that they could grow their family. Clyde's mother had had 8 children, so it's possible that he wanted something like that himself. Little Ty was the center of their lives, but Jessica had a life outside the home as well. She joined a book club in town and was well known throughout the community, so her social circle was quite full. In November of 2021, the members of her book club even threw her a surprise baby shower. It turned out to be the last time the group ever saw Jessica. By the way, I post true crime and new cases here every day, so if that sounds like your kind of thing, please consider subscribing. It helps a lot. Jessica reportedly experienced poor mental health on several occasions over the course of the year. It's possible that these symptoms were caused by her pregnancy hormones, but it's also highly likely that Jessica was just depressed. By July of 2021, her mental health became so poor that she had to spend some time at a mental health facility. Since Clyde was always busy with work and also had to take care of their child, Jessica asked Brent to take care of the family dog. But for some reason, the dog just went missing while Jessica was away. When she returned, her beloved pet was nowhere to be found. And when she asked Brent about it, all he said was that he sent it to a farm. He refused to divulge the location of this farm, if it even existed in the first place. Just like that, Jessica had lost her dog to a man that clearly didn't see what the big deal was. While there's no way to confirm this, Hanson's behavior strongly suggests that he killed that dog. Sending a dog to a farm is a common euphemism used to describe a dog's passing to a child. Could Hanson have been using this specific phrase to subtly tell Jessica that he'd killed her dog? And if he did take it to a farm, why did he do that without the consent of the pet's owner? Hanson claimed that he just didn't want to have to take care of the dog. He also stated that if the dog came back, he might need to start caring for it again, which was something that he simply didn't want to do. Either way, the circumstances behind the dog's disappearance were suspicious, to say the least, but what followed was nothing short of shocking. Jessica was understandably upset that her dog had just been taken away from her without so much as a word. The fact that Hanson was refusing to be upfront about it or even consider getting the dog back made her angry, just like it would anyone else. It was at this point that Hanson unleashed the kind of fury that you'd never expect from this mild-mannered, normal-looking man. As Jessica told him to take some accountability and possibly try to convince that what he'd done was indeed a violation of trust, Hanson used all his might to shove her and then started slamming his fists down on her head. Remember, this is a woman that was 4 to 5 months pregnant at the time. The fact that she had a baby in her belly did nothing to quell Hanson's rage. It seemed as though he was angry at her for daring to question him at all. It's fair to say that the attack came from Hanson's misogyny, his belief that women were worth less than him, and that Jessica had no choice but to accept the decisions of men, no matter how ridiculous or hurtful they might be. It bears mentioning that Clyde was there at the time, and he stepped in to stop the assault. The police were called, and Jessica filed a report against her brother-in-law, leading to him getting charged with 2 counts of simple assault. But it seems as though he was bailed out of jail not long after. It's possible that one of his brothers helped him get out of jail as he awaited trial. Potentially even the father of the unnamed survivor that bravely told her story only to be ignored. It's important to draw attention to this fact. Hanson was enabled by his brothers, and even by the religious community. Bethel leaders and religious elders were aware of the kind of person he was. What happened next could have easily been stopped, but it wasn't. And as Christmas approached, Police Chief Van Voren heard something he'll never forget. It's time we circle back to the moment of the confession. Hanson exchanged Christmas cards with the police chief, and subsequently told him that Clyde and Jessica don't live there anymore. This was a conversation that lasted about 30 to 40 minutes, during which Hanson and the police chief exchanged pleasantries before Hanson made the curious statement. During this time, a food delivery driver passed by Clyde and Jessica's home and noticed blood pooling around the front door. He called this in to the police, and the information was relayed to Chief Van Voren right as Hanson was sitting in front of him. No outcome would have brought Clyde, Jessica, and Anika back. Some will say that Hanson should have died for what he did. Others will say that he's at least behind bars where he can't hurt anyone again. With Ty now orphaned, the Hernandez family started trying desperately to bring him back to New York. They wanted him out of the South Dakota environment that led to him being confronted with such lifelong trauma. But a move like this required money, and lots of it. Jessica's cousin, Veronica Torres, set up a GoFundMe account to help pay for the expenses, and the amount was thankfully met. Ty's current status is unknown, but there's a chance that the Hansons might fight to keep him with them. Considering the presence of at least 2 predators in the family, one can only hope that the Hernandezes are able to get custody and bring Ty to safety. What drives a human being to commit such acts of violence? Oftentimes, these incidents are rooted in control, entitlement, and rage. Misogyny also often plays a role here. Family annihilators see their families as extensions of themselves, and they hate the idea of losing even the tiniest bit of control. When their sense of control is threatened by financial strain, relationship breakdowns, or personal failure, they may lash out in a twisted attempt to assert dominance or reclaim power. These acts are not random. They are calculated decisions fueled by anger and a desire to erase perceived problems. And yet, in the case of Brett Hanson, it's hard to find a motive. He didn't seem to be struggling financially, nor had he experienced a personal failure. It's possible that his brother Clyde intervening on Jessica's behalf rather than taking his side pushed him over the edge. While that might sound minor, it might just be how a man like Hanson thinks. After all, he described what he did to his brother and pregnant sister-in-law by running his thumb across his throat, almost as if the murders were a joke to him. Hanson hadn't expanded on what made him snap, as he described it. It's possible that he didn't snap at all, but instead executed a plan he'd been working on for quite some time. So what do you think of this case? Did the justice system fail Clyde, Jessica, and their unborn daughter Anika? Or was the plea deal the best option given the circumstances? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you like the way we create these videos and you want to help bring more cases like this to light, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives. Thank you once again for watching.